Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, November the 3rd, 2023. So I've got an easy question for you. Can you name a president who was assassinated in November 1963? That was 60 years ago. Easy question, isn't it? Because, of course, it was John F. Kennedy. But actually, there were two correct answers because there was another president who was assassinated in November 1963. In fact, he was assassinated on November the 2nd of 1963. So the 60th anniversary of his assassination was yesterday. Now, that president was Ngo Dinh Diem, who was president of South Vietnam. Now, around 2 years before his assassination, Lyndon B. Johnson, the then vice president, I think on a trip to Vietnam, said that Ngo Dinh Diem was the Churchill of Asia because he was standing up against communism. He was a hero of the hour who's going to save Asia from communism. You know, South Vietnam was going to be a domino that wasn't going to fall. Then, 2 years later, on November the 1st, 1963, there was a coup in South Vietnam. A coup that was organized, or they helped to organize it, by the CIA. So the CIA helped remove Ngo Dinh Diem from office, and so really they were kind of involved in his assassination, which happened the next day. So that's really tough, isn't it? I mean, 61, you're declared. America tells you you're the Churchill of Asia. 2 years later, same country, same officials, kind of organize a coup against you, after which you get assassinated. That is really tough. So for some people, it can be really tough being an American ally, particularly if you don't deliver. So I want to talk about another president, a president who is still very much alive, and that is Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. Now, the reason I want to talk about him today is because there's recently been an article about him in Time magazine, and I want to kind of relate this article to his horoscope and use that as an opportunity to just look at a general update on his chart and on the transits and things like that. So let's look at this article in Time magazine. And it's titled "Nobody Believes in Our Victory Like I Do. Inside Volodymyr Zelensky's Struggle to Keep Ukraine in the Fight." So what I particularly wanted to focus on was these two paragraphs, and it says, "But his convictions haven't changed. Despite the recent setbacks on the battlefield, that's of course Volodymyr Zelensky, he does not intend to give up fighting or to sue for any kind of peace. On the contrary, his belief in Ukraine's ultimate victory over Russia has hardened into a form that worries some of his advisers. It is immovable, verging on the messianic. He deludes himself," one of his closest aides tells me in frustration. "We're out of options, we're not winning, but try telling him that." Zelensky's stubbornness, some of his aides say, has hurt their team's efforts to come up with a new strategy, a new message. As they have debated the future of the war, one issue has remained taboo: the possibility of negotiating a peace deal with the Russians. Judging by recent surveys, most Ukrainians would reject such a move, especially if it entailed the loss of any occupied territory. So perhaps Zelensky is reflecting his country. I don't know. So what I will be doing in this video is I will be looking at his horoscope, and I will be looking at what's going on, and I will be trying to relate his stubbornness that it talks about in this article to his chart. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Friday, November the 3rd, 2023. Okay, so what is going on today? Here is the positions of the planets for November the 3rd, 2023 at noon, set for New York. So you can see that the moon is still in the sign of Cancer. As I said yesterday, moon works very well in Cancer. The moon is in its own sign in Cancer. It's quite an emotional place for the moon. It can be about security and about creating a secure environment, particularly in the home. And it's quite a defensive sign. But when the moon is in Cancer, it's generally a fairly grounded place for the moon to be. And you can see that the moon is making a sextile to Venus, and that's really nice. Moon sextile Venus. It's good for all kinds of relationships. It's also good for getting the details right. So if you're trying to impress someone, or just make someone feel at home, you know what to do. It's those small touches that you can do to make people feel happy, to help people relax, perhaps so they can open up, talk to you, and relate. So that's great. And the moon is also sextile Uranus. Now Uranus can be a bit unstable and can create a bit of chaos, but it's a sextile. So it's about creating a bit of excitement, but not so much excitement that it causes absolute mayhem and chaos. So overall, it's a good day for relationships, for meeting new people, provided we understand our limitations, provided we don't make commitments. Now, the reason I say this is that because Venus in Virgo, 24:55 Virgo at noon, is opposition Neptune. Now, Venus opposition Neptune is actually quite a difficult aspect. It's not dramatic, but Neptune can cloud Venus. There's Venus in Virgo. Venus in Virgo wants to concentrate on the details, but then along comes Neptune and creates chaos. So if you're meeting someone for the first time, you might delude yourself. You might allow yourself to be deluded by them. And that's not just in terms of sort of romantic relationships or romantic fantasies. And if anyone is trying to sell you something, be careful. Those phone calls you get, those phone calls we all get, telling you, whether it's timeshare, telling you that your bank account's been compromised, whatever. There's plenty of scope for delusion. So just don't believe anything that anyone tells you today. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to completely reject them, but just have an open mind. Consider the possibility that you are being deluded. And in terms of romance, if romance is what you're interested in, if you meet someone who you like, don't move too fast, and just always consider the possibility that it is just plain fantasy. And Venus isn't just a planet of love, it's a planet of money. And so going back to this concept of people trying to sell you things, be really careful because there's a danger of making mistakes with money. So I would have suggested that today, don't make financial commitments, and don't make large purchases on things that you don't need. Okay, I understand some large purchases are necessary, but if something catches your eye, particularly if it's something that you think might be beautiful, might be attractive, then consider the possibility that you're making a mistake, and maybe tomorrow when you look at it again, it won't look so beautiful, it won't look so attractive, but you'll still realize that you spent a lot of money, and that applies not just to things but to sort of entertainment. You might be inclined to spend money on, I don't know, eating out, entertainment, all that kind of stuff. Spending money is easy, but next day you might realize that you spent too much money. So be really careful there. So that's one opposition. There is another opposition, the Sun opposition Jupiter. Now, I've already talked about this from a heliocentric point of view. If you put the Sun in the center, in the center of the solar system, rather than the Earth, because properly the Sun is the center of the solar system. But yeah, if you do put the Sun in the solar system, say you do this, for example, like that. This is today's planets from a heliocentric point of view. You see, we have an Earth-Jupiter conjunction. So as I think I said recently, a Sun-Jupiter geocentric opposition is the same as an Earth-Jupiter conjunction. So that's what we've got today. And, when you've got an Earth-Jupiter conjunction or a Sun-Jupiter opposition, it can be a trigger. It can release something. And not necessarily anything good. That's what Jupiter does. Jupiter sometimes doesn't really care what it's releasing, but be careful with that Sun opposition Jupiter or Earth-Jupiter conjunction. And in general, Sun-Jupiter opposition can be about excessive behavior. It can be about exaggeration. So watch out for people like going over the top, and ourselves, we must make sure we don't go over the top. We must behave with a certain amount of modesty and decorum. So there are some pitfalls today. That Venus opposition Neptune, the Sun opposition Jupiter, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that it can be a good day, provided we're sensible, down to earth, grounded, we don't exaggerate, we don't chase fantasies, we don't get taken in by con men, we don't con people ourselves, provided we keep it simple and low key. I think it can be a great day. Okay, so let's now look at the 12 signs. So I'll do my my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Friday, November the 3rd, 2023. Aries, it's a good day for uncovering things. You ask questions, dig around, and you're also persistent. Some of the new knowledge will be useless, but there will be some gems. And when you feel that you've got a complete picture, you can start making plans. But for the moment, secrecy is important. Taurus, you've got a powerful vision of the way the world should be, and it's something you want to communicate. However, your opinions might not be to everyone's taste, and over the course of the day, there could be disagreements. But don't be stubborn. Criticism is a dynamic process, and you could end up benefiting from it. Gemini, if something is in the wrong place, you'll know about it pretty quickly, and you'll want to deal with the situation. And that's the way to go, dealing with small details and leaving the big picture for later. In this light, you're feeling uncertain about your broad direction, and the people close to you aren't making the situation any better. So under these circumstances, you should probably avoid making important decisions. Cancer. The moon, your ruler, makes fortunate aspects to Venus and Uranus. You can benefit from an active social life in terms of both companionship and excitement. But nothing will rock the boat because you're in control all day long. For many Cancerians, it's a time for letting one other person work their magic. Leo. There are powerful forces at work which you need to take account of. They are not immediately obvious, but you ignore them at your peril. Yet, if you're able to understand the surrounding instability, you have an advantage. You can anticipate the chaos, and in competitive situations, you can actually come out the winner. Virgo. If there is something you want, then you can probably get it. Assuming, of course, that you're being realistic and you're not caught up in fantasies. Just articulate your needs using clear language and everything should fall into place. But in relationships, there is scope for confusion and gestures could so easily be misinterpreted. Libra. The moon, while moving through a high-profile sector of your solar chart, makes fortunate aspects to Venus and Uranus. You come over as a sympathetic personality who has something interesting to offer. This means that meetings and interviews should work out very well for you. But it's so easy to say things that spoil everything. So think about what you're supposed to do. Think about the script and just stick to the script. Just don't do anything crazy and unplanned. Scorpio. Today there is an opposition aspect between the Sun and Jupiter, which has a direct impact on your star sign. You're going to be energized and your ambitions are going to be very important to you. And while you can be successful, you can't storm ahead without giving some consideration to other people's sensibilities. Even people who are unreasonable need to be respected. Sagittarius. Today, you're full of insights. These insights might appear random, with no overall pattern, but they are all pointing to the same thing. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll know what it all means. A fear that has no grounds in reality could hold you up. Perhaps one pointless worry will just lead to another pointless worry unless you're able to display some self-discipline. Capricorn. It doesn't have to be you taking the action. You might have led the way, perhaps by example, but at a certain stage you need to step back. And the initiatives that other people take are likely to be fortunate, and you can provide some helpful encouragement. But exaggerated behaviour should never be tolerated. Aquarius. There are a number of demands on your time, and it might feel that you have to be all things to all people. Rather than do everything at once, you just have to do everything separately, shifting your focus at regular intervals. Some of the people you have to deal with might have too much energy for their own good. Pisces. It looks like being a fun day with loads of opportunities to brighten your environment and also to make everyone around you happy. And if love and romance are important, then there are definite opportunities. But with Venus making an opposition aspect to Neptune, there are elements of fantasy and delusion. Okay, so I'm now going to move to the I Ching. As always, I asked the question, what is today going to be like for people watching this video? Okay, so I threw the coins 6 times in the air, and I got a single hexagram, which didn't move, no changing lines, and it's this hexagram 29, the abysmal. Now, on the surface, that sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? I mean, it relates to an abyss, to a pit, and the danger that we might fall into the pit. So today, there is danger. It might not be physical danger, but there are lots of pits for us to fall into. Okay, that might literally be pits. Watch where you're walking. Don't fall down a manhole or whatever. Maybe someone hasn't put the manhole cover on. Something like that. So don't fall into holes. But in general, there are dangerous situations. It's a kind of dangerous situation that we're probably relatively familiar with. We've seen it before. And so if we're careful, we should be okay. Simply, because if you keep seeing a danger, you keep having to deal with the danger, you just get used to it. So that shouldn't be a problem. And even if we fall into a trap, we suddenly get involved in something, we don't back off, and we just fall in a trap. Even then, it's not necessarily the end of the world, because with this hexagram, the abysmal, there's always the suggestion that whatever the problem, there should be a way to get out of it. So if we find ourselves stuck, we find ourselves making a mistake, getting stuck in a hole, there is going to be a way out, and we just have to think it through. So don't panic if you're stuck. You just need to work with the environment around you, work with the resources you've got. If necessary, seek help. Don't be afraid of seeking help, and it should be fine. But there's no reason why we actually need to fall into these traps because we should be dealing with a danger that we're familiar with. Interestingly, this hexagram, when it moves, the moving lines can be really bad. But when it's not moving, when you look at the hexagram as a whole, it's not quite as unfortunate as it looks. So it should be okay, but just be really careful today. And if something does go wrong, if you do find yourself stuck in something, whether it's literally stuck in something or stuck in some problem you're involved in, don't panic. I suppose, if you're in terms of getting physically stuck, I suppose make sure you've got a cell phone on you just in case you really do get stuck. But I doubt it's going to be a case of being physically stuck. So just work with the situation, work with the resources available to you, and it should turn out okay. So I now want to look at the horoscope of Volodymyr Zelensky. Of course, I understand that by doing this, I'm sort of courting controversy to some extent. I know some commenters on this site think that he is absolutely wonderful. I am myself not convinced. I think there are issues there, but yeah, let's have a look at his chart. It's a chart I have looked at before. So going back to that Time article, the Time article was kind of suggesting that he was quite stubborn. But, he had got it into his head that he wanted to do something, but, he wanted to, for example, there's been this offensive, and he wants to keep on the offensive, and he's been stubborn about particular areas, like in Bakhmut. I think in this latest town, they're worrying about Ardvika, if I pronounce that right, near Donetsk. But he has been stubborn. He doesn't want to go onto the defensive. And that might be a problem. And I think he said something like we've got to keep advancing. Of course, if you keep advancing, that can be quite a dangerous thing to do. And Ukrainian casualties since June have been very high. I think I saw somewhere they were up to 90,000. I don't know whether that's killed or dead or whatever. So it's quite a serious thing. His stubbornness. So where do we see stubbornness in his horoscope? And we certainly do. So in astrology, you've got cardinal signs. Aries, Libra, Scorpio, Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer. You have got fixed signs, which are Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, and then you've got mutable signs of Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. Now, looking at his chart, if we look at his chart, he has got a Sun-Venus conjunction in Aquarius. He's got 2 planets in Aquarius. He has got 3 planets in Leo, and these are 3. So he's got 5 of the 7 traditional planets in fixed signs. So, including the Sun and the Moon and Venus and Mars, and Saturn. So, particularly, this having the Sun and the Moon in fixed signs. Yes, he is fixed. He is not someone that finds change easy. I think he's assumed a role, and he's stuck with it. Now, that can be an advantage. Sometimes it really is important to stick with something. But if circumstances change, we need to be able to change too. And I think that this is a problem that he's facing. He can't change the battle. He doesn't have any water in his chart. There you see Pisces is empty. He's got Uranus in Scorpio, but that's a kind of generational planet. This lack of water is a problem. I think very often from a military perspective, you do need to have a bit of water because you've got to kind of feel the situation. With your emotions, you've got to feel how it changes. And I mean, on the battlefield, things change and then you have to change. But if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to end up losing. I understand we're not talking about a general, but he is making some effort to push the war in a particular way. And I think that his fixity is creating real problems. And other things in his chart, we notice he's got Neptune in the 7th house, and with that Neptune close to the descendant, then there is a certain sense in which there's a sense of self-deception, or perhaps is that deceiving other people? I don't know. Maybe he's deceiving his donors. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not articulating fully to his donors how the war is really unfolding. So that's how the Neptune in the 7th might be working. We also notice that he's got Moon square Uranus Moon in Leo square Uranus in Scorpio, that is incredibly stubborn. I think it can be. Uranus is a stubborn planet. So when you put it in Scorpio, it doesn't want to move. And then there's a Moon on the IC, square Uranus. So he's really holding on to something, and but it's kind of a bit explosive as well. He doesn't like it perhaps when his view of the world is criticized. He's got Moon in Leo. It's that contradiction. Sun in Aquarius is supposed to be quite detached, but Moon in Leo is very much into his sort of ego, and he probably switches because he's born relatively close to a full moon, so you can move from Aquarius to Leo quite quickly with that. Now, as far as an update is concerned, what's I don't know, next couple of months, what do we think might be going on? Well, to begin with, it might be a good idea to just look at his solar return for 2023. So he was born in January. So this solar return is pretty much coming to an end. The solar return, what do we see about the solar return? The solar return has Pluto on the midheaven. And look how the solar return has got all those planets above the horizon. There's not much down at the bottom. So, I suppose this is a high-profile solar return, seen in the public eye, but with Pluto on the midheaven. So that's that is quite intense, and it's perhaps a sort of a transformation in terms of how he sees his role. I suppose at the beginning, of the year, I suppose he was still being idolized, and people weren't really asking serious questions about his competence. But I suppose now, Pluto on the midheaven, we may be seeing some kind of transformation there, and Moon in his solar return is conjunct his Neptune. There's a little bit of delusion there, I think. Is he able to really understand what's going on in his country, what's going on the battlefield? I got into trouble from one of my commenters. I suggested that he was detached and he didn't really understand the people of Ukraine, and someone got really upset about that. They really questioned that and gave the implication in what they wrote that they had some inside knowledge about what it's really like in Ukraine. Of course, I don't speak Ukrainian. I've never been to Ukraine. I was just looking at the astrology, but with this lack of water and that Sun-Venus conjunction, Venus is about how you relate, and very close to the Sun. So it's Venus combust with no water in his chart, except for Uranus and Scorpio. I really do think that there is a suggestion there that he actually does find it difficult to empathize with the suffering of the people of his country. Of course, he might appear to empathize, but he's an actor. He knows how to do the motions. A lot of it is choreographed, the way he dresses and so forth. So I'm not convinced that he is really able to empathize with his country. But maybe that's unfair. He's a politician. Can politicians, whoever they are, empathize with the people they're ruling. I mean, if you're going to be president of whatever, whether it's Ukraine, the United States, or whether you're going to be prime minister of the UK, you have to accept that you're going to make decisions, and as a result of your decisions, people die. I mean, that's just the nature of being at the highest level of politics. So maybe saying he has a lack of empathy, well, he's just a politician. That's stating the obvious. You don't have to. Maybe you just don't have to get into astrology to say that. As far as what's going on at the moment, now there was a full moon at the end of last month, and this full moon was there was the October full moon. I don't remember where it was. Yeah, the full moon on October the 28th was at 509 Taurus. And you can see that he has got his sun at 507 Aquarius. So there was a full moon smash on his sun. Taurus Scorpio, kind of on his 6th, 12th axis of his 6th and 12th houses. And that full moon hitting his sun so exactly, also hitting his Mars. He's a man with, Sun, Venus conjunction, opposition Mars. That full moon may have been about reality, been a reality check. He suddenly saw things for what they really are, and perhaps he didn't like what he saw. So I think that might have been quite a difficult full moon for him. Another thing is that Mars is now moving Mars is now in Scorpio, and over the next few days, Mars over the next couple of days, Mars will be conjunct his Uranus, and it will be square his moon. So he has got Mars hitting his moon and his moon Uranus square. Okay, it's a very short-lived aspect. Will just last a couple of days, but I think things are happening very fast in Ukraine, and I think that particularly like a couple of days' time, we've got transiting Saturn going stationing on Ukraine's natal sun. Natal sun. It's transiting opposition. It's at 0 degrees Pisces, opposition Ukraine's sun at 0 Virgo. So that's really not helping. So I think Mars is causing him a fair amount. It's causing him a lot of problems, I think. And Mars having made that square to that conjunction to Uranus will make a square to his midheaven. Then you've got on November the 13th, you've got a new moon. The new moon is at, I think it's at 2044 Scorpio. So it's just past his Uranus, and that new moon, that full moon is square his midheaven. So I think that's creating more problems for him. And I think I think this just goes on, and looking sort of longer term. He's got new moon December the 12th, which is right on his descendant, which again, I don't think that helps. I think that perhaps suggests something about his enemies and rivals. With Zelensky, when I'm talking about enemies, you think that his enemies are like like Russia, but it's probably more, his enemies are probably closer at home. So I think we can see those problems with the new moon on his descendant. Then in January, he's got a birthday in January. January the 25th, So let's look at let's sort of wrap things up by looking at his January birthday, his solar return for 2024. So solar return for 2024. Assuming he's still in office, I mean, probably if Zelensky's got any sense, it's dangerous being in Ukraine. He should probably just just retire. I mean, he's got the money. He can just leave. He can go somewhere else. He can go to Miami. But assuming he's going to stay as president, which he probably will try to do. Remember, he's got all those planets in fixed signs. He's not going to want to move in a hurry. He's going to be quite difficult to move. So if he's still president, January 25th, 2004, we can see that you've got Sun conjunct Pluto opposition the Moon. So you can see that which is square Jupiter. So we've got a T square in his solar returns with Jupiter square Moon, and it's a full moon. So he's got a full moon on his solar return. So full moon. That really suggests that he should be seeing a light. If he hasn't seen light already, I think the full moon, surely that's the time where he's got to really start to see that this is it. I mean, that it's got to be over. I mean, his political career in Ukraine, you would have thought that full moon would be the final evidence for him, but it's time to move on. Notice Pluto. January Pluto goes into Aquarius. Now that's really important, because if you look at his horoscope, he's got Mars at 0 Leo. So Pluto, end of January, is going into Aquarius. Pluto is opposition his Mars. That is again a really quite a sort of dangerous, fraught time for him. Yeah, I mean, overall, looking at Zelensky's horoscope, his short-term problem in November is dealing with the Mars transits. Now, we all have Mars transits all the time, but I suppose when you're president of Ukraine, when you're in the middle of fighting a war which isn't going well, Mars transits may be a particular concern. So that is something that he has to watch out for. I suppose I should say one more thing, and that's his solar arc directions. So he is coming up to his 46th birthday. So if we move all his planets 1 degree, so 1 degree for a year. So outer wheel is his solar arc directed planets. Is inner wheel is his horoscope. We can get a broad sense of perhaps some of the things that are going on. If you look at Mars, look at Uranus. Uranus is at 217 Capricorn. His solar arc directed Uranus is moving to a 135 degree aspect, a sesquiquadrate with the Moon. I think that's quite important because I've already said that he's got Mars. He's got Mars aspecting his Moon. So he's got Mars aspecting his Moon in November at a time when he's got solar arc directed Uranus hitting his Moon. The Moon could be seen as the people, and so Uranus, the people of Ukraine. And I think that if Uranus sesquiquadrate, moving to the sesquiquadrate of the Moon, may sort of indicate increasing popular dissatisfaction with him as president. Now, if he stays longer, if he carries on being president, he's also going to have Neptune problems. Solar arc directed Neptune at 341 Aquarius is starting to move onto his sun, and I'm wondering if he's not starting to feel this already. Remember, he's just had a full moon on his sun at the end of October, with solar arc directed Neptune on his sun. So that Neptune does have a deluded quality to it. I think I suspect, looking at that, he's increasingly finding it difficult to actually understand what's going on in Ukraine. He's finding actually being able to evaluate how the war is going, and that might encourage him to make poor decisions. Overall, things don't look great for Zelensky. I'm not going to attempt to sort of predict, the absolute worst for him. I don't think it's there. I mean, I'm not saying this is sort of absolutely 100% totally catastrophic. I think he can walk away. That's the right thing to do for him. And the sooner he does it, the better. Particularly when he thinks back about what happened to Ngo Dinh Diem 60 years ago. There are similarities there. Both compared to Churchill, both lionized by the Americans, and the Americans turned against Ngo Dinh Diem, and they might turn against him for one reason or another. And so I think he needs to quit while he's ahead. He needs to really look at what happens to Ngo Dinh Diem, because that's not just something isolated that never happened. These things happen, can happen to allies of America. I don't think it'll happen to him, because I think he'll do the right thing. I think he'll leave Ukraine and have a happy life. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about Zelensky. I hope you found that of some interest, but it's just my view. I mean, it's just astrology. I'm not. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, just my view. Anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow.